And welcome back to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park. A little fewer people this week, but we can manage, I'm sure. Beth is a little worn out from working all weekend, so she's resting up. And Morgan, she got a class switched on her, so she had to go be a good student tonight. So we don't blame her for that, because I know how shitty it is trying to catch up when you've missed a class. So it's all right. But from the not so wild state of Maine, we have Tracy joining us this week. Good evening. You're muted still.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I'm a parade of technical malfunctions tonight.
That's okay. Your browser can develop a mind of its own at times. It happens. So and all the way from Seattle, and not quite in the Morador, but next door is Bryce Blanenagel. Good evening, Bryce.
Hello there. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to join up on the trailer park.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been so long since I've seen you.
Yeah, right. I mean, a whole 2 weeks. I mean,
yeah,
I'm suffering my heretic woman convulsions now.
I know. I was chuckling to myself, though. I thought, if Tracy's computer craps out on her, we could call it the ginger hour.
I'm only slightly ginger. Thank you very much.
What's wrong with that?
I have a little bit of red in the beard, but that's it. That's it. Other than that, it's blonde hair, blue-eyed, very, white and delightsome, not freckled and delightsome.
What's wrong with freckles, huh?
Nothing. Just
you don't want them.
I'm a half-blooded. I think that's the point. I'm half-blooded with gingerism.
Okay, well, if it's any consolation, I mean, yeah, my father had brown hair, but but my brother and I were full on ginger. How that happened, I don't know. But
the dice roll, the genetic dice roll, you won.
Yep, sure did.
Good enough.
Well, we come with no soul, so it makes the whole atheism thing that much easier.
Predisposed to hating God.
Yeah, wow. I don't hate God, damn it. Oh, well. Yeah, so, well, first of all, thanks for popping in short notice, because I was kind of lazy this week and didn't really come up with anything until the other night, and I laughed because, well, Sunday night for Holy Crap, almost everybody was sick. Actually, Joseph, we told him not to come because he said he was super tired, and dumbass showed up anyway, but virtually everybody else was sick. And so Shujin and I were looking around to see who else we could try and get to come on and join us. And I saw Bryce was online. So I'm like, dude, he's like, oh, I'm at a show. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's okay. Well, what are you doing Monday? So Shujin was like, oh, was he free? I'm like, no, he's busy at a show. But I booked him for Monday. He's like, fuck off.
I'm sorry, Shujin.
I thought
next week. Let's do it.
And then at the end of the show when I was plugging, and yeah, so I just booked Bryce Blanenagel, and he's like, fuck.
Oh, that's amazing.
I thought it was awesome, but actually it worked out okay because a friend of Shujin's was able to come on, and we were able to get Maddie Love from Atheist Talk and the Trans Atheist podcast to pop in with us, so that was cool. And awesome. And I have to say it was so sweet because we had Maddie and Hertzy on 3 weeks ago or so.
Back in a second.
And they're awesome. And oh yeah, Bryce just had to step away for a second, but you'll get a kick out of this, Tracy. I messaged Maddie and I was like, hey, how would you like to come on and be a stand-in co-host on Holy Crap for the next couple of hours? And the reply I got was, I think you sent this to the wrong person. This is Maddie Love. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I sent the message, silly. And she's like, oh, okay, I wasn't sure. I'm like, no. It's like, yes, I asked you.
Modesty.
I know. She's like, I wanted to be sure. I didn't know you wanted me. I'm like, yes, I did. And not just because you were the only one on. There was a few people on, but not everybody is suited to like come on a podcast at short notice. So
That is very cute.
Absolutely. I thought it was adorable. Bryce will be back in a second. He's been dog sitting, and the puppy's daddy just came to pick it up, so he'll be back on in a second. But so anything exciting going on in Maine?
Is anything exciting ever going on in Maine?
We had a fair. The fair was kind of exciting.
We just went fair season. September is fair season, so we just went to the biggest one in the state, which is the last one. And it's always interesting to watch people at county fairs because it's a very wide cross section of humanity.
Yes.
And I especially get a kick of the tourists, people who are coming to, do some leaf peeping or something. And so, you have these people who are, 50-ish, and she has her Michael Kors bag and her, her Gucci, her Gucci shoes. And I get a kick out of, you're going to go walk through the cow barn with your Michael Kors bag.
Yeah, I mean the sheep and the goats are going to be really impressed, though. I'm sure.
I'm sure they are. They're happy. The cow is like, "Oh, thank you for buying a PVC bag and not a leather one."
Yeah. and the sheep and the goats are like, well, they don't normally make those out of us, so whatever.
and we have to have half a dozen conversations with our daughter about, this is why you can't bring home a sheep. This is why you can't bring home a goat. This is why you can't bring home that duck. Even though it's really, really cute, we can't bring home a duck.
We're talking about visiting State Fair, Bryce.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because your daughter's what, 9? You said
9, yeah. So,
yes. And
she didn't even go on any rides. Didn't go on any rides. She didn't want to. She wanted to look at animals the whole time. So.
Oh. Well, if you ever go to upstate New York, the Animal Adventure Park, that's the one I went to that has April the giraffe. She would very much like that. Although she would definitely want to take everything home. Because all of the smaller animals are extremely friendly. So, and then you'd have to explain, no, you can't have an alpaca, and you can't have a monkey, and you can't have that exotic African bird over there.
Yeah. No,
camels.
She'd bring them all home if she could.
Yeah, but that's sweet.
Yeah, she's
see, I kind of consider myself lucky. I grew up on a farm, so all of the animals were already home. I could, I had a pet chicken. I used to try to make pets out of the piglets, and I had a pet cow for a while. And the worst though is because we had a small herd of beef cattle. And I kept wanting to name them, and my mom's like, no, you don't want to name that one. I'm like, but he's pretty. And mom's like, no, because he's not staying.
Yeah, we stayed out of the barns labeled beef cattle. We didn't go in there. And Rachel said, how come? And I said, because those are beef cattle. She was, is somebody going to eat them?
Yep.
Yes, they're all going to be eaten, and we don't want to look in their eyes before we eat them. She was like, yeah, okay.
Yes. Oh,
we prefer to be hypocrites about our meat.
Yes. As a farm girl, I'm totally with you.
If it just didn't taste so good.
I'm so down with it when the lab grown meat hits the market. Yes. I'm all over it. I will sacrifice a little bit of flavor, not to say that it will not taste the same, but even if it doesn't taste the same, I'm totally down with that, so that I can have a hamburger that didn't used to live out in the field.
Lexa over in the chat, she's like, do you still hear the screaming of the lambs, Clarice? Thanks, Lexa. Well,
wow.
worse. I know it's totally off topic, but see, I like grew up on a farm, but my dad was a major hunter, and he used to hunt something called muskrat. I don't know if they have those down your way, but they're a rodent. But there used to be a market for their fur, and so he used to do his own processing. And I grew up with these skin stretchers all over the house on the registers to dry, and like we're talking like inside out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my.
farm life. Woo! I told you guys I come from a really long line of rednecks. But there was one the house that we lived in, the bedrooms were all down like a long hallway, and then at the end of the hallway, your first left was the door outside, and then you went further forward and there was like another tiny hallway that went into the bathroom, but it was still like a little hallway, and there was a heat register right outside the bathroom door, and so he would put like this dead animal skin on the register. And I remember one night I was like 6 years old maybe, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I didn't want to wake up my mom and dad because I didn't want them to get annoyed that I had to get up in the middle of the night. And I'm like, oh, I can go to the bathroom by myself. So I get up there, and we had one of those big yard lights in the farm, so like a big, almost like a street light, but it stood like in the middle between the house and the barn, and it shone in the kitchen window, and it directly illuminated the dead animal skin sitting right outside the bathroom door, and it turned so that the eye holes were looking at, like, there's like, it's just skin, right? But there's like these empty eye sockets looking at me, and I'm just like, oh fuck. Well, I didn't say that because I was a little kid. So I squashed myself up against the wall on the opposite side and like inched myself, and I had to pee so bad. It was awful. So that's like my vivid memory of the nasty old animal skin. Like, and I remember thinking it's dead, but I'm like, looks like it's gonna jump out and get me, and I'm sick, so what do I know? Yeah.
Oh wow.
That explains a lot.
I know, yeah. So if you're gonna be a fur trapper, maybe find somewhere else to dry out your hides. I'm saying, maybe
aside from right outside your kid's bedroom in the middle of the night,
yeah,
the moonlight ominously peering through their eye holes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the yard lights like completely lit up the damn thing. And and they're on the heat register, so it kind of smells like musty dead fur everywhere too. Yummy. Anyway, so about those Mormons.
Flawless segue. Yes.
Lexa doesn't believe me. I didn't say "oh fuck" when I was little. I didn't. I remember. In fact, I remember, and it was probably around the same age, maybe 7, and like, because my dad swore all the time, and I knew that I wasn't supposed to do that. And I remember having that conversation with my mom. Was like, if I'm not allowed to say that, how come Daddy can say it all the time? And she just kind of like tried to change the subject. So I was like, wait a minute. And because you told me that's really, really bad. Does that mean Daddy's really, really bad all the time? And she's like, just go eat your dinner.
Interesting how those rules can apply to parents but not children. I always wonder that too, because I tend to have a typically difficult time keeping my censored self, even around like children or around people who should not hear me say fuck. I oftentimes have a hard time even thinking about it before it just falls out, and then thinking, if I ever raise kids, then at some point I'm going to have to not say these things around them.
Well, I don't know.
Well, the thing is,
Tracy's a resident parent.
My husband and I swear like drunken pirates. Yep. But somehow we have managed to not ever drop an F-bomb in front of our daughter. We're very good. I don't know how I've managed it. So it is possible. And when they're little, like for the first year before they're able to start repeating words, you swear as much as possible as you can in front of them.
Get it out of your system.
Because you know you can.
I see, and I can think of times, like I have several nieces that are way like younger. I think they're maybe 8 and 7-ish right now. And I remember when they were little, because I've been an adult swearing my head off for years, you know, and when they were born, it was like, oh, I can't do that. And so I might, you know, I'd be talking away and blah, 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 fuck. And then I'm like, oh, and then my first reaction is to want to say, oh, fuck, I said fuck. You know, it's like, not helping.
Kids will not let, they're very good, but like my daughter is brutal with the do as I say, not as I do. Like she will, like you told me, like if we raise our voice, I'm not allowed to yell at you. How come you're allowed to yell at me?
Yep. Well, and that's what I said about my dad.
Yeah, I mean, so she's like, she will rake us over the coals if there's any double standard. So, which my father drives my father-in-law crazy because he grew up in a household and he raised his kids as because I said so, and if you don't like it, you can go clean the garage, you know. But
I mean, is it not a good thing to have that kind of idea instilled of fairness even from a very young age? Like,
it's absolutely
because you're older than me doesn't mean that you get to do stuff that I don't get to do, or that you can do something to me that I can't do back to you. I understand. I'm not a parent. I don't have any experience with it, but I understand the utility for that, of like instilling that same idea or instilling that notion inside a kid's heart, because that is going to behoove them in the future of saying, why this is unfair? Why is this unfair? Why should I just accept something as a norm if it's unfair? So I think that, I mean, that it may be kind of a knife edge to try and dance on, but I mean, it still seems like an overall good idea.
It's a very good idea to not be, to be as unhypocritical as possible, because for one thing, if you're a hypocrite, you just teach them to be a hypocrite, which you don't really want to do.
True.
And, the teaching by example is still the most effective way to do it. And, there are all of the things, if you do plan on having kids someday, all of the things that your parents said to you that you swear you will never say, you will totally say them. You will say them. Like, because I said so, like for the first 4 years of their life, because I said so is a perfectly acceptable answer. You're not going to argue with a 2-year-old about why she has to put her pajamas on. It's just it's like, no, you're putting your pajamas on because I'm the mother and you're the child, and that's the end of the discussion. At the age of 9, that doesn't wash anymore, because I said so is no longer acceptable. So there has to be some conversation.
Well, and that's
but
something...
if she calls me out on my behavior, and it also teaches them not to put up with crap from other people.
Yeah, well, and also there might be some utility in when you say something and your kid says why, and they're at an age that they can understand logic, then it forces them to manufacture an argument of why they don't want to do something. Put on your pajamas. Why? when you no longer say it's because I said so, it's because it's bedtime and you need to get ready for bed, and they have to articulate the argument of why they don't want to go to bed, then that in and of itself seems like it can teach critical thinking skills as well. But I've never been a parent, and I've never been in a meaningless argument about whether or not somebody should put their pajamas on, so I don't really know how that works out in the real world. This is just a high-minded ideal from somebody who's never been a parent before.
If like a one-off, that's a perfectly reasonable discussion. But if every single night, like 10 nights in a row at 8:45, why do I have to put my pajamas on? For the same reason you had to put them on for the last
2 weeks,
8,000 nights of your life at this time.
Yeah. But that was something that always stuck out for me as a kid, was when I would question an adult, and my mom was terrible for this, that whole because I said so, it carried on. Even though I would challenge it, that tended to be it. And I noticed that when I got older, all of those things that I never got a good explanation as to why I should do them, the first thing I did was not do them. Like, we grew up, we never had pop or soda, whatever you call it. Every state's different, I keep finding out, but we never had pop unless we were having company. Now, of course, if you went to grandma's, grandma always give you everything that you weren't supposed to have, but that's the whole other. But we were never allowed to have pop unless we had company. So, of course, as soon as I went away to school, I was like, I'm drinking pop every damn day. And I did for many, many years, because I like, if somebody had sat me down, even as like a tween or a young teenager, and said, okay, look, this is the information why I don't allow you to drink pop all day every day, and this is why I think it's not healthy, etc., etc., and nobody ever did that. And that was like, with money and buying stuff. Now I think they should teach this in school too, like things like how to manage a bank account, and how to manage, use checks, if they actually have checks anymore, I don't know, but things like that. But when I was a kid, my mother was very frugal and very good with her money, because she had to be, because she was a single parent, and I'm, that's totally fine. But when I was a kid and I would say, oh, I want, this or that, and it was just no. It wasn't, okay, let me explain to you why we don't have extra money for that, or let me explain to you why it's not a good idea to spend money on that, and things like that. That was never explained. So when I got out on my own, I was like, oh, I don't want to buy this and buy that. And then I was like, why don't I ever have any money? I don't understand. And it was like, and like I say, a lot of that I kind of fault the schools too. But when I went to university, one of the first thing, I was like the first couple of months I was there, they had it was like a career fair, but it wasn't. It was vendors for stuff. And there was somebody getting you to sign up for a credit card. And I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know if they still do this, Bryce, but if you're a student, they're like, oh, you're automatically approved kind of thing. And of course, I didn't know a damn thing about it. I'm like, okay, sure. And I totally didn't understand how it worked. I thought, because you're a kid with, no experience, they give you like a $500 limit. And I thought that as long as you didn't spend $500, you didn't have to make any payments.
Oh my.
Yeah. So you can imagine how that worked out.
Yeah, right? But I agree with you. I think it is kind of a systematic problem. So when I was in high school, I took a lot of science classes that I never ended up using. I didn't go into any STEM careers or anything, but I did take physics and calculus and these various classes that are necessary to go into any scientific careers. And now my day-to-day life, I don't use any of those skills. I could eventually brush up on them if needs be, but I don't use them. I haven't shaken the rust off of them forever. But for some reason, the money management class, the actual skill that I need every single day, that was only a required single semester. Out of all of the years of math classes that I took that I'm not using, I only took one semester of a money management class, which is a skill that everybody needs every single day of their life. Like, I agree, Deb. It's definitely a systematic problem, and there are simple solutions to it. Teach money classes.
Oh yeah. So hi Matt, I see you over there, and Lexa, I love it. Lexa says an easy way to put a kid to bed: read the Book of Mormon or a Bible, or say that you will keep reading it until they go to bed. That works.
Yep.
Oh wow. Shit. So you were gonna tell us some Mormon horror stories, weren't you?
I can do my best. So I just spent Deb, I saw you at I just saw you at the Myth Information Conference. Both of us have our opinions about it. Both of us have talked about it ad nauseum. I won't belabor any listeners with any details on that. Yes. However, I came to that conference off the heels of a Mormon history conference that was in Nauvoo.
Yes.
And this was the John Whitmer Historical Association conference, which is a conference that's run by the Community of Christ, but is a secular academic organization. It just so happens to be run by one of the second largest breakoff faction of Mormonism, of Joseph's Mormonism. So yes. They ran this conference. It went amazingly. A number of presenters and authors all presented their most current research, and it was really, really incredible. During my time there, however, I was treated to a tour around Nauvoo by a man named Joseph Johnston, who is a Nauvoo historian. And of the people who I spoke with there, a number of people made it clear to me that he is essentially the foremost authority on Nauvoo history, on Nauvoo Mormon history, I should say.
Nice.
He is the authority, basically, and he garners a lot of respect in the historical circles when it comes to anything relating to Nauvoo. And he was nice enough to take us on a real tour through Nauvoo. And
very nice.
It was incredible. So Nauvoo, the Mormon Church owns most of Nauvoo. The Brighamite Mormon Church owns most of it. The Community of Christ Mormon Church owns a little bit, but by and large, it's all owned by the LDS Brighamite Church. And they have dumped millions of dollars into this place to make a tourist attraction, to just make it really cool and make people say, oh, wow, I can go to a bakery that was just like it was in, 1840, and I can eat a little cookie that they made in their brick fire oven. And, I can go in to the Mormon Community Center where they're making ropes, and they'll actually give me a rope and show me how they spun rope back in the 1840s. And it's great, but it's an amusement park. There's not really much history there that you can garner from what they're presenting.
Yeah.
So it was an absolute treat to actually find out Nauvoo history from a Nauvoo historian while in Nauvoo, giving us a tour of Nauvoo that was not the church's Nauvoo history tour.
Yeah, because I was going to say, you were just over there a few months ago when you did your big solo tour. Yeah. And I was going to ask how it compared to the first time you were there.
No comparison whatsoever. It was apples and oranges. I mean, the people. So I'm convinced that if somebody is going to tour around Nauvoo, they need to do it with a real historian, because the missionaries that are there, that are staffing these various historic sites that the church owns, they don't know shit. They don't know anything about church history. They don't know what the significance is of the place that they're giving tours. They're just given a script, and they tell you what they know about their script, and then they say, "This is our tour. Have a nice day," and they send you on your way.
Yeah.
A number of hours there, a couple of these historic sites with other historians, and the missionaries would just sit there in stunned silence as the historians were telling me, and I was asking questions, and we were getting into these deep questions and the deep history of Nauvoo, and talking about the various the infighting that was going on with polygamy and everything that served to be Nauvoo's downfall, that none of these missionaries know about. None of them have studied any of this at the level that the historians actually have. And well, needless to say, it was a lot more interesting to tour it with real historians instead of just getting the bullshit narrative from the missionaries.
Oh, I can imagine. And like you say, they don't study any of this stuff. So I wonder, just by doing that and having those discussions publicly, maybe even planted a couple of seeds of inquiry.
Yeah. It was interesting. Just an anecdote. We went to the Brigham Young House, which any lovers of Mormon history will know that the name Brigham Young, and will know that he is the guy that took them out to Utah, because Joseph Smith was dead long before they actually made the move to Utah. The church owns the Brigham Young House in Nauvoo, and they have it, staged to look like 1840s furniture, and yeah, it's quite a magnificent house. It's even at the time when it was built, Brigham Young was one of the autocrats of Mormonism. He was very wealthy, and he had one of the best houses on the block. But the two 18-year-old sister missionaries, sorry, 19-year-old sister missionaries who were leading us through the tour were utterly baffled when three historians come walking in there with somebody like me, and I'm asking all the questions, and the historians are answering all of these questions, and we're getting into these deep questions about Mormon history. And then come to find out, one of those missionaries, her uncle was actually a missionary companion with one of the historians that was leading this tour around. It's like, oh, this is kind of a small world. So she's going to go home after her mission and talk to her uncle about this historian and ask him about him, and find out that this historian no longer believes in the church and has written extensively about Mormon history. Maybe she'll look into Brigham Young. Maybe she'll ask him questions of what exactly was I telling everybody when they would come and get these tours from us? Is that actually real? Who really was Brigham Young? So, little tiny nuggets, little seeds of doubt like that, I think, are being sowed constantly for the missionaries around Nauvoo.
Excellent. Because they sugarcoat so much. I mean, I don't even know a whole lot about Brigham Young, but from what I do know, I'm like, that guy was a real asshole.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Major asshole, as they say in the movies.
Yeah, but he was... So, learning more and more about Nauvoo, I've come to understand that Brigham Young was a major asshole, but he was a smart asshole. Joseph Smith was an asshole, but he was a very dumb asshole. So,
I mean, if you're running the same scam that you got busted for already, like, I think it was just blind luck that he got away with what he did.
Well, yeah, I can pretty much agree with that. With a couple of modifiers,
Right.
Joseph wasn't very lucky in very many aspects. In maybe the broad scheme of things, he had luck shine its prominence upon him, but by and large, most of the things that Joseph Smith got around, touched, or tried to affiliate with, or tried to manipulate, it always fell to shit. I mean, it wasn't just his presidential campaign that he was assassinated during. It was every business venture that he went into debt. When there was in Nauvoo, they bought a ferry to ferry people across the Mississippi to and from the half-breed tract that they owned in Iowa and the commerce area that they owned in Illinois. So they bought this ferry, and it basically went under in the business. So then there was this private company, these two brothers, who bought another ferry, a smaller ferry, and began running their business, and it became successful. Joseph Smith subsequently sent them on a mission and bought them out of their shares of this separate
Oh,
ferry company, and then in 2 years it went into debt and went bankrupt. So
wow. So
I
he
mean,
sucks.
yeah, even when he had everything working in his favor, he couldn't do good with it. It's just marvelous to me.
So why was I mean I have some idea, but why was Brigham Young such a colossal asshole?
Well, I guess okay. So Brigham Young is an interesting guy. He begins to show his true stripes in Europe when he was from late 1839 until early 1841. He was with the Quorum of the 12 Apostles out in Europe, and they were conducting a 2-year mission out there. They
Okay.
set up a separate publication called the Millennial Star. They spent a lot of time converting people. And according to the History of the Church, Volume 4, by the time that Joseph called them home, sent them a letter and said, "You guys have done good, come on back," they had upwards of 1,600 members out there.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, that number is probably wildly inflated, but that
The
began.
church would never do that.
Right? How dare they? So that essentially set up the first immigration efforts from Europe into Nauvoo, because these missionaries would come around and tell people, "Hey, the economy over here is terrible. The church of the state and no separation really sucks." Well, it turns out the Mormons have this really cool little settlement right on the Mississippi that's great for shipping. It's great for business. The birds sing, and the skies are blue, and crops never die. And they told them all of these lies about what Nauvoo was. And all of these European immigrants said, this sounds good. Nauvoo, this sounds like the promised land. Let's check that out. So they began setting up immigration efforts that would subsequently bolster the Mormons' population from the about 10 to 12,000 that they were in 1839 when they first got to Illinois, up to about around 20 to 22,000 by the time the Mormons left Nauvoo. So sorry, let me just say 1845. That's a fair
Okay.
fair guess, fair estimate. That's not when they started leaving. Whatever, doesn't matter. So this perpetual immigration fund was essentially set up as a indentured servitude system for European immigrants that were coming over.
Oh,
So
jeez.
they would sell all of their property essentially and give it to the church, and the church would say, "When you get here, we will give you everything that you need to set up your home and your business and everything. You just have to give us all your money." So this was this was a program that Joseph wanted, that Brigham Young put in place while he was on his mission out in Europe.
Right.
So they set this up. The Europeans give the Mormons money, and they come over expecting that there's going to be this dainty little perfect town with no problems, and factories and everything good that you need for building up a system and an economy. And they actually get to Nauvoo, and they see that it's just a recently drained swampland that doesn't have any industry. It doesn't have anything useful yet. There's no business built up. They don't have any major shipping
Wow.
operations. And even being on the Mississippi, they should have. They didn't have any of those. And they realize, well, we kind of got bilked out of our money in this situation. But they had
Yeah.
everything sunk in, and they weren't going to go back to Europe, so they were stuck. And eventually they followed Brigham Young out to Utah.
Wow. So I got some swampland in Nauvoo for you to buy.
Yeah, right. A mosquito's included in the price. Yeah.
Wow. Jeez. And I can only imagine the bullshit that they sold these people, like once they got to Nauvoo and saw the kind of, you know, cesspool that they bought into, what
Yeah.
kind of bullshit they had to sell them at that point to get them to hang around and keep following them. Like, that
Yeah.
seems incredible to me.
And the people, unfortunately, they were woefully ignorant of what was really going on in Nauvoo,
Yeah.
of all of the underground that was happening, and how much Joseph and the Mormons relied on underground deals and underground operations in order to make Mormonism work. It's really appalling. Let's just say they were sold a bill of goods, and the Mormons didn't exactly deliver once they got there.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
I always heard, and like I said, I've not read anything really detailed about Brigham Young, but I think estimates were Joseph Smith had something like 30 wives, and Brigham had quite a bit more than that, I believe.
Yeah, I think conservative estimates put Brigham at 56 wives.
Damn.
Um, yeah, so Joseph, yeah, the most conservative estimates say about 34 wives for Joseph. I There are a few historians who have gone as far as saying that he had 80 wives, that Joseph
Damn.
had 80 wives. But I think those estimates are just wildly out there.
Right.
But this only goes to speak to the women that were actually sealed to him in the temple, went through their
Yes.
endowments, and went through the whole, Van Dusen reported version of the Mormon endowment ceremony, where they're naked and they're anointed with oil, and then the woman goes to a special room, and then the man goes to another room, and it's very fucking weird.
As opposed to the
That's
modern shit that's really fucking weird.
Yeah, at least they're not naked nowadays, so it's all good.
Yes. This is good. Yes.
So that number, those estimates of 30 to 40 wives, that says nothing about how many women Joseph was actually having sex with.
With
That's
exactly.
that's
and
just how
and
many had
and
married him.
and did he may have even convinced some women that they had, some informal thing. Oh, well, now we're married and I can have sex with you, and yeah, who knows. And
Yeah,
I
really.
imagine that a lot of women who maybe didn't get the full marriage package were highly discouraged from saying anything.
Yeah.
And like, I always get a kick out of the line, well, I have to bury you, or Moroni's gonna come back with his flaming sword and kick the shit out of me. Like, that was always my favorite.
And isn't women sort of women in air quotes? I mean,
Girls,
wasn't
yes.
what? Yeah, what? I mean, wasn't he really hot for underage girls, 15, 16-year-old girls?
Yeah. Definitely the youngest wife that he took officially was Helen Mar Kimball, who was 14 years old at the time that he took her as wife. I think if I'm not mistaken, her journal plays out that he held off having any relations beyond just having the official sealing for a couple of years. However, there are a number of other accounts that I find incredibly disturbing, one of which is Mary Rollins Lightner. When Joseph first moved out to Ohio, he began courting people, or he began courting women in a very underground type of way. So the first known incident where he had an extramarital affair was Fanny Alliker, and that was in 1836. She was, I believe, 19 at the time. Emma, who was Joseph's wife, caught them out in the barn
And he
behind
was
the
how
house.
old at the time?
He would have been 32, I think. So that's not too far of an age disparity. That's not too offensive. However, this account from Mary Rollins Lightner, she when she first met the prophet, she was incredibly captivated by him, and she told how he would basically not leave her alone. Let me, if you don't mind, Deb, let me give me just a second to look
Yeah.
this up,
Yeah.
because I want to read it from her.
Yeah. Because a lot of these women kept diaries and wrote a lot of these details down, which is how we get account, or they've written letters to somebody and recounted their experiences. So we're kind of fortunate that that was a thing at the time. As for women, I know keeping a journal was kind of the thing to do. And so a lot of these women did write this stuff down, which is helpful for us nowadays. But
Yes. So I'm trying to find this exactly where it is. So what happened with Mary Lightner is she was talking to this local this communist leader in her area named Isaac Morley, who would stay with the church for a number of years and even go out to Utah, I believe. So Isaac Morley got a hold of a Book of Mormon, and then Mary Lightner saw the Book of Mormon on the shelf, and she wanted to see it. She wanted to read it. So um, Isaac Morley gave her the copy of the book, and she took it home that night and read it with her family, and then brought it back in the morning because that was part of the deal. She brought it back to Isaac Morley, and he said, "Well, I bet you didn't actually read it. I bet you couldn't tell me anything about the book." And then she recited the first few lines of it and told him about what happens in the first chapter, and he was amazed. Isaac Morley gave her the book because he was amazed that this little 11 or 12-year-old girl would actually read this book. So this is from her autobiography, and this is hosted on the bookofabrahamproject.com. Before or about the time I finished the last chapter, the prophet Joseph Smith arrived in Kirtland and moved into a part of the Newell K. Whitney house while waiting for his goods to be put in order. Brother Whitney brought the prophet Joseph to our house and introduced him to the elder ones of the family. I was not in at the time. In looking around, he saw the Book of Mormon on the shelf and asked how that book came to be there. He said, "I sent that book to Brother Morley." Uncle told him how his niece had obtained it. He asked, "Where is your niece?" "I was sent for." When he saw me, he looked at me so earnestly, I felt almost afraid. Now, this is Joseph Smith at the age of 32, looking at a 12-year-old so earnestly that she felt afraid. After a moment or two, he came and put his hands on my head and gave me a great blessing, the first I ever received, and made me a present of the book, and said he would give Brother Morley another. He came in time to rebuke the evil spirits and set the church in order. We all felt he was a man of God, for he spoke with power and as one having authority in very deed. And this is somebody who would later end up becoming one of his wives in Nauvoo. She was 12 at that time. So, yeah.
How old was she when they got married? Do you know?
She would have been, I guess, 17, maybe 18.
Oh, wow. He was patient, I guess.
Yeah. At least with Mary Lightner, he was. There were other women he wasn't. So, yeah. I mean, Tracy, I think the point that you're getting at is this shows signs of a sexual predator, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think even if you took the age out of the equation, I think there's clear signs of him being a sexual predator because he's the prophet.
Yes.
Bingo.
And so they can't, it's not like they can say, "Go fuck yourself." You know, that's just not going to happen. So he's a predator anyway.
Yes.
But then when you factor in the fact that a lot of them were teenagers, then it's just gross.
Well, and I mean, I laugh at the flaming sword bit, but when you think about that, so here's, like Tracy said, he's the prophet. This is someone that you're taught to revere as being the mouthpiece of God, and they're telling you that if you don't marry me, that means that Moroni is going to come and kill me with a giant flaming sword, and basically it's all your fault because you said no.
Right. I mean, there's no difference between that and if you don't take me back, I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
You know,
or
it's just
I'm
classic
going
abuse.
I'm going to find your family and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another good example of this, I forget which woman it was, but there was a woman who was propositioned in Nauvoo to be married to Brigham Young and refused to do so. And things came to a head, and she ended up being locked in a room until she would consent to kiss Brigham Young.
Ew.
Which is really creepy, really disturbing. But it exhibits this level of mental kind of control where they take somebody out of a situation where they feel like they have any say and any ability to dictate the actions of what comes next, and they say, you have to do what I'm saying or else we both die. And that was one of Joseph's favorite things. An angel will come back with a flaming sword and kill us both unless you fuck me right now. That is downright evil to do. That is salacious, and especially when you're somebody like Joseph who knows that you're lying. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was saying. He knew that this wasn't true when he was saying it. That is just downright fucking evil and utterly reprehensible for a human being to do such a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was quite the scumbag. and that's not even getting into things like Mountain Meadows and ordering people killed and the Danites and all of that fun stuff.
No, I mean those were only small aspects of everything else that was going on in Kirtland or in Kirtland and Missouri. I was informed by a historian, a Nauvoo historian, that the Danites actually didn't survive into Nauvoo because they had a sanctioned militia and police force in Nauvoo that was sanctioned by the Nauvoo Charter. So they didn't need the Danites because they had their own fucking army,
Lovely.
of which Joseph was crowned the commander-in-chief. So the Danites actually existing as the Danites, the daughters of Zion, as they called themselves initially, that wasn't really a thing once they hit Nauvoo because, well, once you already have an army, you don't need to have a separate mob arm that works underneath the army.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe mention what the Danites were because I don't know that Tracy would know that or not.
Yeah.
She's like,
something creepy, but beyond that.
That's the thing is like, Deb, you and I are playing some insider.
I know it's not fair because I've studied this shit for years.
Yeah, I mean this is some deep Mormon insider shit, and for some reason Deb's not a Mormon, but she knows all about it. So the Danites, well, that's the thing. Like you start studying this and you fall down the rabbit hole. It's like Jesus.
Oh hell yeah!
How can you not want to know more? It blows my mind. So the Danites, beginning in Missouri, when the Mormons got to Missouri in late 1837, early 1838, that's when Joseph and Sidney Rigdon made their famous midnight flight to get away from quote unquote persecution, but it was actually just a lawsuit for which they were liable for $1,000. So they ran away from town. So beginning in Missouri, that's when the Mormons started their actual armed forces movements. So beginning, they started what was called the Brother of Gideon Society, and the only real the only real quote that we can point to about the founding of the Brother of Gideon Society was from John Whitmer, who was the church historian at this time. And John Whitmer included that that they started the Brother of Gideon Society for the safety of the church, basically, which meant we have so many people who are trying to kill us. We need to start our own militia, our own armed mob, so that we can protect the Mormons and protect ourselves. So what started as a Brother of Gideon society eventually evolved into the Army of Israel and the Danites. And the Danites, or Daughters of Zion, as they were initially called, Danites was kind of the short term, uh, they were basically just that. They served as the militia arm for the Mormons, and when the Mormons came up against hard times against the Missouri militia, the Danites were the actual armed forces that had various scrapes with the Missouri militia, which resulted in a lot of Mormon deaths. That includes the Battle of Crooked River, the Hans Mill Massacre, and a couple of other very minor scrapes. So these Danites essentially started out as this military arm, and they kind of signal a time when Joseph realized that lawyers were really useful, but a militia of armed guys is a lot more useful than some lawyers are. And then once we hit Nauvoo, that's when they have the Nauvoo Legion and the Nauvoo Police Force sanctioned in the actual Nauvoo Charter, and that's when they have massive armed forces of thousands of men who are ready to fight at any given time. Insider baseball, like I said.
This is a little bit off topic, but I'm curious if there's any literature or evidence that Joseph Smith was had narcissistic personality or psychopathy. Like, did he fit into that sort of Idi Amin, Vladimir Putin, that sort of that cookie cutter dictator, mad with power? It sounds like there's a lot of similar traits going on there.
Recently, I read this book called The Sword of Laban, Joseph Smith Jr. and the Dissociated Mind. And it's a book that was published, written by a Community of Christ reconstructive surgeon, actually. Somebody who has dealt his whole life with people who have suffered incredible physical traumas. And he essentially describes in this book that Joseph Smith was suffering from dissociative mind disorder, where he was, thanks to a number of childhood traumas, he would go into the state of mind where he would just kind of disconnect and pull away from reality. And then his fantasies would sort of override everything and dictate all of his actions. When I was at this conference in Nauvoo, that author, Bill Moroni, is actually the chief editor of the John Whitmer Historical Association. I was able to sit down with him and get my book autographed and talk with him more about his book since it was published, and ask him how it's been received, how, would he rewrite it? Is he going to do a second edition? And he said, well, the thing is I only painted a very slight picture of Joseph Smith. There was another historian and I believe it was an actual psychologist who did this, who conducted a psychological profile on Joseph and found that he marks basically all of the boxes for malignant narcissistic personality disorder. So not just narcissistic or not just NPD, but malignant, which is an extra, you need to fill in a couple of extra boxes to actually be considered malignant. And yeah, and a number of descriptions paint Joseph Smith as this two-faced kind of guy who would say one thing and do another, who would not care about what anybody was saying about him, who would do just terribly narcissistic things and not suffer the ramifications of whatever happened. He just didn't give a fuck about people, and he would do anything and everything he could to serve his own means. And so to answer your question, Tracy, yes, Joseph fits the perfect profile of NPD and malignant NPD. He was, by all means, just a terrible guy, a horrible human being.
Well, you got to think, if you've got people who you've recruited to work with you on this religion, and they're your advisors and your go-to guys, and then you turn around and steal their wives and send them to another country for who knows how long because you just want to bang their wives, and then you decided, oh, well, she's pretty good, I think I'll keep her. Like, seriously? Like, it takes... a hell of a low, and then bring them back and be like, well, I'm the prophet, God said I had to do it.
Yeah, he sent an angel, had a big flaming dick. I mean, a flaming sword. I mean, yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
You don't want me to get chopped up by Moroni, do you? Like, come on.
And it goes so much deeper than that, too, because it wasn't just the wives. It was their property. It was their livelihood. It was everything that they had. Joseph fucked out of them. He took it. He stole it. He didn't give a shit about other people's livelihoods and possibilities of prospering in life. He just was only out for himself. He was a bastard, an absolute bastard of a human being.
That sounds so much like the modern day FLDS.
Where they're FLDS, they're fundamentalists.
Where they will, if you speak poorly of the prophet, or if they think you're going to leave, they will take your property, take your wife, take your kids, take your job.
Yeah, absolutely. They're getting down to the fundamentals of what Joseph preached. Yeah, that's exactly it. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, is that, I don't know how much of what do you study at the FLDS church in the same way that you're studying the Mormon church, or is that a whole other bag of shit?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what's the grossest thing I can come up with. I'm just gonna give up and call it shit.
It's absolutely true. So I'm studying chronologically the history of the church. I'm only to 1840. The FLDS isn't actually a church until about the 1920s. So I'm still a long ways off from studying the FLDS the way that I've studied Mormonism, or Josephite Mormonism. When that time comes, I have a feeling like I'll begin to understand the people who created the FLDS church and see just how much of bastards they actually were as well. Because, it so happens that religions that are founded upon, misogynistic ideals and male domination tend to bring out the bastards in all of the men. It's weird how that works.
And they branched off when the Mormon church renounced polygamy, isn't that right?
Yep, exactly.
They said, no, we want to fuck as many teenage girls as we want and call them wives. So,
because we want to do what Joseph did. He's our prophet.
Yeah, he's the man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you see the inner workings of just how much women were nothing but commodities, they were property to be passed from one higher oligarch in the church to another higher oligarch, you begin to understand the mentality that the Mormons had about, or let's just say Joseph had, about the women that he was fucking over and their husbands who he was sending on missions and who he was brokering these various deals with, because the women were just that. They were property. They were not seen as anything beyond that.
And you still see that in places like Colorado City and Hilldale now.
Oh yeah, it's very much the FLDS. That's
they're the ones that are still following Warren Jeffs, even though he's in prison. And there's been a lot of weird shit going on in there since he got put in jail. There was an edict that no one can have sex with their wives anymore. You're not allowed to have any children. There's only specific men who are allowed to have children, and it doesn't matter, who you are or how many wives you have. You're not allowed to have any kids. And then they started kicking out any person who they didn't like and taking away all their wives and children, and just
Jesus
insane.
Christ.
And they took away all the children's toys and said that they weren't allowed to have toys anymore, and just absolutely insane things. But look who we're talking about. The guy is fucked in the head beyond belief. Have you ever heard somebody with a creepier voice in your life? Like, have you heard? You've not heard Warren Jeffs talk? Oh,
I don't recall any time. that I've
there
heard.
are recordings out that have been leaked of him addressing his quote flock before he was arrested, like when he was still present in the community. And that is the creepiest shit I have ever heard in my life. Like,
You know, what is fucking so terrifying about cults like the FLDS? Now, there are different degrees of cults. I consider Mormonism a cult, but there are more cultish cults that exist, and the FLDS is super fucking culty. We see where they came from.
Yes.
We see Joseph Smith, his teachings. We see that he was leading this religious cult of fanatics that would do anything to appease the prophet. And we see the people who are doing the same thing for this motherfucker Warren Jeffs, who will do anything and everything to, to continue the word of the work of the Lord, of the Lord's prophet, whatever the case may be. And it's I guess it sucks, it's frustrating, but it's not surprising to see that this is what Mormonism has created, right? Because when we see something spawn out of a culture like Mormonism that is so hell bent on authoritarianism and misogyny, it's only a conclusion, a possible logical conclusion, that something like the FLDS crops up. And I think one of the fundamental problems with cults like the FLDS is that they're only one very small extension away from Heaven's Gate or from Jonestown or
absolutely.
I mean, it is so not hard to get from the prophet commands me to give him my wife, therefore I will do it, to the prophet commands me to kill myself, therefore I will do it.
Yeah,
that's not a very big step.
Yeah, there's in some ways the FLDS is more fucked up than the People's Temple, because Jim Jones wasn't stealing people's family and property and I don't
reorganizing them.
Jim Jones at all. He was a horrible, really bad person, and that whole, that was, I can't use the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid" anymore. Ever since I read 1,000 Lives, I can't use that phrase anymore, because it's so not funny. What happened to those people is not funny, and so it's just, as a euphemism, I don't freak out when other people use it, but just for myself, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't use it anymore. But there's very little separation between the People's Temple and the FLDS. The difference is that Jim Jones sent everybody off to Guyana with the intention of killing them, and there's no evidence that Warren Jeffs has the intention of killing everybody in his church. But in terms of the way, the amount of control that's being exacted over those people's lives, there's very little difference.
It's similar, very, very similar.
And when you bend people to submit to everything you say to the point that they will give everything up, it's not hard to get them to take one more step of giving everything that they have, right? Because you're not going to convince a rational person with a good job and a good family living in a nice home to go kill themselves. But somebody who has already given everything they have to you, all of their worldly possessions, they believe that you are everything, that every word that falls out of your mouth is the one truth, that is God's words. It's so easy to get them to do and say anything you want them to, and that really fucking shines a spotlight on the damage that cults have.
Well, here, let me give you a creep moment. I found a recording here of Warren Jeffs.
Awesome. All right.
So since you've not heard this fucker before, you at least have to hear him once. I'm not sure which tape this is, but it sounds like it's going to be a creepy one. So here we go. Oh, he is explaining celestial marriage to students 5th grade to 10th grade and talking about polygamy and plural marriage.
God damn it.
This is a home ec class from 1997.
What I'm about to hear is about to make me hate so many things about the world.
I'm sorry, dude.
Here we go.
I know these are just words to some of you.
Let me turn it up.
I yearn that a thrill will go through your heart one day.
Can you hear it?
Pray about it. Some girls foolishly declare in their youth, and it's heard by people, I don't want this plural marriage yet. And word gets to the prophet. You can foolishly express some of these things and hurt yourself. Just like everything else you've been through in your life, you don't see all the whys and wherefores. But if you have a faith, trusting in those over you, that the prophet and the Lord does see what you can do and need, trust in them, have a living faith, then you'll be prepared to a degree to abide this Father. So girls, receive this training and go at it with your eyes open of what you're about.
Yeah, I think that's enough, creepo.
He sounds like an old newsreel narrator from like the 1930s.
Yeah.
Sort of, only on drugs.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think he sounds creepy as fuck. But...
Yeah. I mean...
Telling a room full of little girls, forget what you want. The old men who want to get in your pants are the ones who know what your destiny should be.
You should listen to those guys, you know.
The fucking rage chills coursing up my spine right now are just so frustrating, because people listen to that and say, that is my prophet. Those are the words of God coming out of his mouth. Whatever he says cannot possibly be wrong because he is the prophet. And no matter what crazy shit this sadistic motherfucker says to these little 12-year-olds in this home ec class, they're just gobbling that shit up like it's God's one true word, like it's fucking manna from heaven. That is so evil. That is so fucking evil and just deplorable for a human being to be and to do. Fuck Warren Jeffs.
Oh, and hi, Trippin. He says it's like he's putting people in a trance and hypnotizing them.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're suggestible, right? It's putting them in a suggestible state of mind. You listen to my hypnotic voice and you marry me, and it's so fucked.
Yeah. It's like, I should be your dream guy. Like, have you seen that guy? He looks like a fucking reanimated corpse.
I saw somebody smashed up his image with Henry B. Eyring's image, and any Mormons in the listening audience will know Henry B. Eyring. Look it up, Deb. Henry B. Eyring and Warren Jeffs.
Yeah. I know who he is.
Exactly the same. You take off the glasses, and it's the same fucking guy. It's incredible.
Oh, jeez.
But both believe in polygamy, so you can't. Whatever.
And hello to your lovely lady in the background.
You're said hello to.
Hello.
She says hello back.
Yay! But yeah, sorry, we promised horror story. Well, there you go. That's a definite horror story.
Yeah, the problem is horror stories are hopeful, or you expect them to be fictional. This was not. This was This is reality. God damn it.
Yeah, how do you spell that guy's name?
Eyering. Eye-ring. It's like a ring you
Okay.
put on your eye.
Oh, yeah. And you said they like superimposed it or something?
Yeah, somebody posted it on, I think it was on the ex-Mormon Reddit or something. It was really hilarious because
Right.
they were like put right next to each other. They look exactly the same.
Okay, I'm not seeing it right
Oh,
this minute, but
bummer.
yeah, that's too bad because I was gonna put it up, but well, even here, like this is a picture of the several prophets, and they all look like a bunch of creepos.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and there's like actually Warren Jeffs doesn't look quite so hideous in that picture, but since now he's pretty gaunt looking. But yeah, these would be FLDS prophets, wouldn't they?
That would be them. Yep.
Yeah. So, and look at, we start with the same two guys. When do we branch off here? Is it one of the Woolies or?
That was Woolley, yeah. So John Taylor was the prophet until 1896, I think it was. Then Wilford Woodruff took over. Woodruff published the manifesto that basically outlawed polygamy, and then that's when the Woolies broke off.
So it would be Woolley the Younger who took over.
Yeah, well, it would actually be John Woolley, not Lauren. John Woolley would be the guy.
Okay, so he's the guy that ran and said "fuck you," Woodruff, and gotcha.
Yeah, because John Taylor had a number of wives. I can't remember. I think he had 7 wives or something like that. He was a bit of a downgrade from Joseph's 30 and Brigham's 56. So
yeah, he wasn't so good on being a playa, I guess.
I guess not. Well, you look at that chin strap beard; it doesn't quite compete with Brigham Young's.
Yeah,
so he wasn't as much of a looker.
It's kind of weird looking.
Yeah,
but yeah, 19th century facial hair was a bit odd anyway. I mean, have you seen pork chops on some of those guys? Like, not just Mormons, but dudes in general.
Oh, look up Martin Harris. Martin Harris has some of the most amazing chop face. Oh, it's beautiful. It's just, yeah. I love me some Martin Harris chops.
Yeah, my grandmother's maiden name was Harris.
Really?
Yeah.
No relation, right?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
We're pretty straight right off of the boat from England, or at least her side.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't find one that was really big, but
yeah, well, that's a pretty good one of him, no doubt. Yeah.
He looks kind of corpsey too. He's got like the sunken eyes, and
he's kind of a weird guy. Man.
Maybe it's some. Was he a prophet or just an elder?
No, he was. I don't think he was. He might have been an elder. I can't remember. He was just 70? One of the 3 witnesses, and then once the Mormons moved from Kirtland, he stayed behind.
They wouldn't have had all that structure quite yet. So
no, God no.
Yeah.
No, he was never polygamist.
He's one of the guys that saw the lump on the table and went, "Oh yeah, that's golden plates."
Yep. Oh, that's him. You know Martin Harris.
Yes.
Definitely.
Not so smarty Marty.
That's him. Dum.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to leave you to solo riff for about 45 seconds. I'm dying for a bio break here.
Okay. Yeah.
Tracy, I know, terrible of me.
Tracy just went to go tuck in her young'un there, but
okay.
But I would just there was a
back.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I don't like to miss tuck in time.
That's
I gotta tuck her in and kiss her.
Bryce has got a bio break thing there. On Holy Crap, our friend Joseph in Paris, he likes to call it a pee emergency.
Yes, I'm very familiar with those.
Oh, you missed. I was looking at. This is Martin Harris. He was one of the people that claimed to see the golden plates in Purity.
Yeah, he looks just like the kind of guy whose testimony I would totally trust.
Yeah. I said he looks kind of corpse-ish too, like with the sunken eyes and crap. I says this is like, Mormon head honcho look. You gotta look like a corpse to some degree. Oh boy. Well, while we're waiting for Bryce to come back, I had to laugh. I was looking in the chat, and there's some guy, and I've seen him around the Great Debate community. Goes by Darth Dawkins, and he was bitching that atheists can't talk about other religions' morality because we don't believe in objective morality, so we're not allowed to have an opinion. I know.
Okay, like how does that even make sense?
I don't know.
Like, because we don't believe morality was handed down by a supernatural being, that there can't be any therefore we believe there's no. It's just, I don't know.
It's the idea, because he's like, how can you be bitching about Mormon morality if you're an atheist? But so it means that if you're an atheist, nothing can be good or bad. So we can't say that the way Mormons do things is bad because we don't know anything is bad.
Yeah, and yet we know that having a harem of 14 and 15 and 16-year-old girls is wrong. So clearly we're doing something right.
Yep. I was just saying, Bryce, there's some twit in the chat, goes by Darth Dawkins, who was bitching. He said, oh, well, how can these atheists criticize Mormon morality if you're an atheist, because you don't know where your morality comes from and blah blah blah.
Why do you have to know where it comes from in order to know what it is?
I don't know.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it boils really down to consequential ethicism. I mean, what are the consequences of my actions, and what do I want done to me? What kind of world do I want to live in, and what kind of consequences should people suffer? I don't really want to live in a world where men are rationing away their women or their daughters as a commodity. That seems like a worse world than what we live in now. So yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Lexa said she loved your reaction, Tracy.
Yeah, see, I'm good for something.
There you go. I found an even better picture of not so smarty Marty.
Oh,
he really looks like a dead guy in this picture.
For sure. Look at that.
Nasty. A moldy old guy. But in the 19th century, they did prop up corpses and take pictures of them, so he could actually be dead in that picture for all we know.
How many wives did they give that guy?
I think he only had the one wife.
He didn't get in at the right time when everybody was
being him.
I know. He wasn't with the cool guys that were marrying up all of. Well, he would have been.
That's why he got that look on his face.
Yeah. Well, I can
just see a tweet. TFW, you die before they hand out all the young wives.
Yeah. Well, Bryce, Joseph didn't steal his wife, did he? Because he'd be a prime candidate.
Well, in some way, yes. So when
she's the one that took his pages, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when Martin Harris went through with the publishing the Book of Mormon, she's like, "Fuck you," and left him. Yeah. So I guess kind of by transitive property, he did a little bit.
So yeah, she wasn't gonna be convinced by the whole flaming sword routine.
Good for her.
Yeah, right.
Which she she did, Tracy? Because this corpse guy there was helping Joseph Smith translate his golden plates, and she got suspicious. So they were writing this down on paper or what have you. She went and like ran away with, I don't know, was it 2 or 3 chapters, Bryce? And disposed
pages,
of it.
So.
16 pages. She
116 pages.
116.
So. Yeah,
my bad.
Sorry.
But she got rid of it and then said, if he's legit, you can translate it all over again and it'll be exactly the same. And
that's a really good test.
It is. To which Joseph said, oh, well, God's mad that I let this happen, so he's not going to tell me what was on those pages again. He's going to change it to something else now.
Yep. God punted on the Book of Mormon. That's what we're getting.
Yep. To punish Joseph, right?
To punish. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just
if only they had carbon paper back then, right? Could have saved himself a whole lot of trouble.
It's too bad they didn't bury it. Instead of burying golden plates, they should have buried a mimeograph.
Yeah.
Right?
Turn the crank.
Oh, God. Make things so much easier.
You wouldn't need the rock in the hat, you know? You just
turn the crank. And when you're done, you can sniff the Book of Mormon and get high at the same time.
As if Joe wasn't high enough already. Come on, Dad.
Well, okay. I don't know, Bryce, are you even old enough to remember sniffing your freshly printed school paper?
You're not even out of your 20s yet, I would imagine.
No, I'm 26, so I'm out of my 20s.
Yeah, you don't. So you don't remember mimeograph.
This is pre-photocopier. And see, my mom was a teacher, so I used to get to help her with the mimeograph machine. So I would be like, hey, Mom, I'll carry those back to the class for you.
Yeah, all the like the handouts that you would get in school, they were all purple because the ink and the mimeograph machine was purple.
But I don't know what was in the ink, but there was some kind of fumes that came off it when it was freshly printed, and you could so get buzzed on that stuff. So all of us kids were like
licking her homework.
We're like sniffing it and like, "Ooh, it's fresh off the machine! Yay!"
Oh my God, I'm old enough to be your mother. That is depressing.
Oh.
I went to school at the wrong time. See, I was at school when they were like, you can't throw snowballs because they might have some ice in them and you might poke out someone's eyeball. That was my school.
We used to pelt the shit out of each other with snowballs. Oh, and back then when I was in school, you could also get high from sniffing liquid paper.
Liquid paper?
Yeah.
Like, what's liquid paper?
He doesn't even know what... You don't know what liquid paper is? Either of you?
Like whiteout?
Yeah,
like the little bottle of white.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we call the brand here was liquid paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was just a Canadian thing. That wasn't an age thing.
Okay.
I was like,
okay.
We're on the same.
We used to sniff the whiteout bottles all the time too. And it'd be like, hey man, you got liquid paper in your nose.
Oh my.
Yeah. And people worry about kids vaping.
Right. That was the school children's like little dusting of Coke on their nose. You got some whiteout on you, man. Get that shit off. Mom will kill you, man.
Yep. You've been sniffing the liquid paper again. It's like, no, just my homework sheets.
It was my friend's liquid paper, I swear.
Yeah. I don't think my mom even knew why I always wanted to help with the mimeograph machine, actually. Because it's good enough when you get handed like 3 or 4 sheets for a homework assignment, but when you're carrying like a wad of like 30 printouts for my mom's class, that's like, by the time I got to the class, I could hardly see straight. Like, how many of these am I supposed to hang out again?
Where's the room? Can't even find it. Wow.
Hey, how come like that kid? There's 3 of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we're
People
old.
like to get fucked up. That's the takeaway from this conversation.
Yes, indeed.
Whether it's mimeographs or women, people have their drugs apparently.
Oh yeah. So what other, like, we have about 15 minutes left or so. So any other like horrible, nasty people that come to mind in Mormonism that did like crazy shit?
Yeah. So this is kind of a fascinating topic. I talked to my co-host from My Book of Mormon, Marie. I had her on my show pretty recently to talk about a guy named John Bennett. And John Bennett is an incredibly polarizing guy in Mormon history because he affiliated with Joseph Smith from 1840, late 1839 to early 1842. And when he was done in his affiliation with Joseph, he went on an expose, a full-on expose of Mormonism and spiritual wifery. Made a bunch of blanket accusations about how the Mormon men are just fucking as many women as they can get their hands on, and it created a lot of problems for Joseph and the Mormons in Nauvoo. But this guy, John Bennett, was actually a trained obstetrician. And when you say trained doctor of any sort from a 19th century perspective, that can mean a myriad of, of possibilities.
Yeah, it could be a good barber that's handy with a knife.
Yep. So trained obstetrician, I guess, didn't mean a whole lot, but basically what it meant was this was a guy who could perform abortions. And when you have a system set up where a whole bunch of men are fucking a whole bunch of women behind, public closed doors, they don't want the public to know about it, inevitably pregnancies are going to crop up. So this guy, John Bennett, was Joseph's best friend for a number of years when polygamy first started becoming a systematized practice in in Nauvoo Mormonism. And it's kind of interesting because Joseph, having 40 or 30 to 40 wives, doesn't have a whole lot of descendants. So I think we can significantly understand that he probably used Dr. Bennett's services very frequently.
Yikes.
But this introduces all sorts of very weird moral conundrums. Women today, a chief complaint about women in society today is that they don't have as much of a say in STEM careers and in public policies, and so many things. That was exponentially worse in the 19th century. Women back then they made homes. That's what they did. They were the homemakers. They raised kids while men did everything else. Men created businesses. Men ran everything. So women didn't have a whole lot of say in what they did or what their worth was in society. Their women's worth was what men told them it was, basically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, women who had children out of wedlock had a very small number of options that they could do. They could frequently go to the brothels to get enough money to survive on. They could be weavers or seamstresses and possibly get enough money to live on. But that was about it. They didn't exactly have career options. So in the grand scheme of things, if you were a woman that had a child out of wedlock, your social worth that was dictated by men was instantly down to nothing. It was diminished to basically nothing. So having a child out of wedlock could damn you to utter destitution for the rest of your life. Following that logic, I almost see it that John Bennett was doing a service to some of these women.
Yeah.
Because most of the people in society didn't know that that Joseph and the higher up Mormons were having sex with these women. It was, by all means, it was kept under wraps. So
yes,
them just starting to have women or having babies and not having any answer to that other than the prophet told me that I was his wife, that wouldn't bode very well for their social status. So if they didn't have abortions, they were damned to whorehouses, basically.
Yeah. And could you imagine, like, you know, oh, I'm sorry, you're a total whore bag that has to go live in a brothel, and you're like, but God told me I had to sleep with the prophet.
Yeah,
You know?
right. And then what? And then what? Yeah. How does society treat you? And
Like
then
shit.
because it's a whole thing about the public persona, you know that Joseph would just deny it. Somebody
Absolutely.
says, "Yeah, you fucked my 16-year-old daughter, and now she's pregnant." No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Yeah, what on earth are you talking about? I'm a man of God.
So really, like, there was no easy option for these women. I feel really bad for them that they had to deal with this and that they didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have anybody they could talk to about this shit.
Oh, hell no. I mean, could you imagine if they went somewhere mainstream and they're like, well, it's your fault you had sex with that guy, and they're trying to explain, well, no, I didn't, you know, Moroni and Flaming Sword, and like,
Yeah.
they would get laughed out of the damn doctor's office.
And yeah, and so many times, like, especially the younger women, the teenage women who I think it was the number 9 is how many Joseph had that were under the age of 18 at the time.
Right.
Imagine them. Most of the time, the marriage wasn't up to them. It was up to their parents. And the parents consented to it, like in Helen Mark Kimmel's case. They consented because Joseph promised them exaltation if they gave him their daughter.
Yes. Yeah, so you get to have the extra special place in heaven because you're going to let me fuck your daughter.
Yeah, and then that daughter ends up coming down with the case of a child.
Yeah.
And if they're ostracized from the community, or if one of them says something about the prophet and they're, you know, kicked out of the community at the hands of the Nauvoo Legion or whatever, they are supremely fucked. They had nowhere to turn. They were that was it. That was the end of the road for them. And
nobody's gonna believe them if they've got a whore daughter and they're trying to blame it on the prophet. Like, yeah, they'll be like, "Oh,
how did you not know that Joseph Smith was a charlatan?"
Yeah. Like Lexa says, total whore bag. Someone found out my stage name.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. Well done, Alexa. I applaud you. Lexa, yes. Not Alexa. Not
sorry, he can't. He's not looking at the chat. He
I can't see it. I'm making an excuse. Yes.
He's relying on my Canadian pronunciation.
Yeah, you put in front of everything. That's why I thought it was Alexa.
Yeah, I know. I said I type A all the time, don't I? Oh man, do you know how many times the other weekend I got, so you're from Canada, aren't you?
Oh dear.
She says that's okay. I'll find some shit on Amazon for you.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
I'm thinking either she's going to like find some actual shit on Amazon or buy something goofy. I don't know.
Sweet.
Maybe she'll explain. Oh, I should tell you. So after I left the party to go back to my room, so I called it Uber, and the Uber driver got lost trying to find the hotel that we were at. Okay. And I'm standing outside and I'm looking at the little GPS thing on the Uber app, and she's like driving in circles and taking wrong turns. And of course, she called me once or twice, and of course I don't know shit about Milwaukee, so she's like, what intersection? I'm like, I don't know, like. So finally I got it sorted out, and but in between all the calls there was a guy sitting next to me, Well, actually, did I even tell you about the guy that sat down to me when you guys went out to smoke?
I don't think so.
Oh shit. I was sitting on the sofa by myself because you'd gone out to vape and whoever else I was sitting with had gone out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what she meant. Yes, she's going to buy you an Echo.
That's I was
So
going to
you
say
could
that.
say
Yes,
There
I
you
couldn't
go.
think of the word. Yes, an Echo.
So I'm sitting on the sofa, and this guy comes over and says, "There's no one else on the sofa." He's like, "Oh, can I sit here?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I just figured it was somebody else from the conference, and I'd been looking at my phone, either looking at my friend's message or deciding whether I was going to call an Uber yet or not, and whatnot. So he's making a little bit of small talk and whatnot, and he was probably about 10 years older than me. And at one point, I don't even remember how it came up, but I was like, "Oh, I'm here for conference." "Oh, what kind of conference?" I'm like, "Atheist conference." Because I kind of figured out that he wasn't there for the con after a few minutes. So I'm like, "Are you here for the conference?" He's like, "Oh, no, I'm passing through." "What kind of conference?" "Like, atheist conference." "Oh, so you don't believe in God?" "No."
That's why I'm at an atheist conference.
That would kind of be key. But he actually was very nice and asked some very thoughtful questions and whatnot. And actually a couple of times was like, "Oh, I never thought of that before." So I don't know.
Awesome.
Maybe he obviously had a bit to drink, so I don't know if he's going to think it through later or not. So anyway, I called the Uber, said goodnight, went outside. I'm waiting for the Uber driver to find me, and there's another guy standing outside smoking, and he listened to me on the phone with the Uber driver, and he's like, "You're from Canada, aren't you?" Like, yes. So what are you doing here? And like, I don't know if he's at the con or what. And I was like, "Oh, well, there's the atheist conference." He's like, "Oh, so you don't believe in God?" It's like, no, that would be.
Is that really a novel concept anymore?
Apparently. And then he started talking and he's like, "Well, I believe that there's something out there, but I'm not really into this religion stuff." And I said, "Oh, you sound like a deist." He goes, "What's a deist?" So I explained to him what a deist is. Like, "Yeah, that does sound like me. All right. And I'm a deist." And
all right. You just gave him a new useful label.
I did. And then the Uber driver shows up. And I get in and, making chit chat. You're from Canada, aren't you? Yes.
So basically, the entire city of Milwaukee had you pegged from moment one.
Yes. Right? So of course the Uber driver is like, "Oh, what are you in town for?" I'm like, "Oh, conference." And I don't know why. I just got a vibe, and I was like, "Oh, it was a skeptic conference." And she's like, "What's a skeptic?" I'm like, "All right, fine. It's an atheist conference." And she's like, "Oh, you don't believe in God?" Like, no.
3 times in a 10-minute period?
Yeah. Well, the first guy, I talked to him for like 20 minutes. So I would say like 3 times in half an hour. So yeah. And but again, at least she was very nice and, "Oh, well, what do you believe?" and asked me some very respectful questions. So I was pleasantly surprised because, it was America, and I was waiting for the whole, "Well, you need to read the Bible." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's partly why I'm an atheist, because I did."
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so that I just thought that was really funny. I think I told you on the flight over, there was a guy sitting next to me. It was this huge ass Bible, and he was like taking notes and writing and all the margins and everything.
Oh yeah, totally.
It was too bad he had his headphones on the whole time. I was hoping he would try and make small talk, but and because it was flying day, I wasn't wearing an obnoxious atheist shirt because I just don't want to. I'm more than white and delightsome enough, but I don't like to give the TSA any excuses to be dicks. So I try and stay away from the provocative clothing when I'm going through TSA.
Right on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually had a similar conversation at my Airbnb in Montana on my way back through coming home after MythCon.
Right.
And the guy who runs the Airbnb, it was the same Airbnb I stayed at on my way out there because it's just a
Right.
halfway point in between Minneapolis and Seattle, and it's just
Makes sense.
13 hours on each side. It was the best halfway point. So stayed at this place, and my first night there, on the way out there to the conferences, there's Jesus everywhere throughout this house. That doesn't bother me because that's anytime I go to a relative's house, the majority of places that I go to have a Jesus somewhere, right? So that I don't care
Yeah.
about that. So on the way back through, so on my way out there, I got in late at night and I had to get up early in the morning. I didn't have a conversation with the guy who runs the Airbnb. On the way
Right.
back through, that's when I did. I actually got in, a little bit early. It was kind of late in the evening, 8 o'clock or whatever. And then I had a little bit of a buffer zone before I had to leave in the morning. So I ended up getting in a conversation with this guy. I was about to head down to my room to write up an essay that I needed to write for Noah, and he caught me off guard and asked me a question or two about where I came from and what I'm doing and whatnot, and the conversation ended up turning to, oh wait, so you're a skeptic then, what do you make of the Bible, and we got into the conversation.
Yep.
And we proceeded to have about a 3-hour conversation with this guy who's a Bible literalist, 6,000 year creationist.
Oh,
Don't say oh no. No, it was actually a
okay.
really interesting
Good.
conversation with this guy. I would argue one of the best conversations I've had with a Christian in maybe ever. We ended up he had his laptop out there on the table, and we ended up looking up talk origins and various
Right.
pictures of these hominin species
Yep.
that we found artifacts, or we found the fossils for, and skeletons, and we had a very in-depth and interesting conversation. And he did hedge his bets and say that if there's something information that I find out that's contrary to something that's said in the Bible, then I can't believe in it. And and we couldn't quite get past that, but by the end of the conversation, he did seem to entertain the idea that science might have something useful to say. And
that's good.
yeah, and I found it interesting because he started using science in his own life in what he was doing with the Airbnb. He had just put up one of the rooms in his house that somebody had just moved out of. And he said, now you got me thinking scientifically about this. I'm looking at the reviews that I've had and what might bring more people to look at this. And I was like, yeah, well, science is a really good way to live your life. And when you base things off of a scientific type of idea, then you can get really, really far in life because it's it's a self-correcting mechanism, and it's really cool. You drive around cars and you use a laptop and a cell phone in order to book people into your house. So science does some really cool shit in the world. So, I mean, all in all, after 3.5 hours of conversation with a creationist, I found myself very enlightened and very interested, and wishing that I could have had a longer conversation with him.
No, that's cool. It's very cool.
Doesn't happen that often, but when it does, you got to count your lucky stars.
Yeah. My host, that was my first time using Airbnb, and my host was very, very much a hippie lady.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh yes. I mean, she burnt incense the whole time, and everything looks like it was, like there were beautiful throws hanging on the walls. Like it looked like I was ready to get my fortune told or something, which fine by me. I like that kind of style. But and it was funny because she says, "Is the incense doesn't bother you?" I'm like, "Oh no, I love it." I said, "That's Nag Champa, right?" She's like, "Yeah."
Nice. Called it out.
Yep.
Wow.
So, because she's like, oh, well, somebody before they complained about it in the review. She's like, they could have told me while they were here. I wouldn't. It's not like I have to have it running 24/7. I could have put it out.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was funny, but yeah, no, that's Nag Champa, right? She's like, yeah. She did massage therapy. No, it was actual massage therapy. That wasn't. Yeah.
All right.
She had a table in her room and stuff, but yeah, it was good. I would probably do it again, but on the other hand, I'm kind of like, after I got there, I was like, because she has access to my room at all times, and I don't know this person and her, but it was fine. It was fine. It was just my first time, so I was a little apprehensive, I guess.
Yeah, Airbnb is very weird in that way that it runs kind of off the trust system. Even when you stay with somebody or you are somebody that has no reviews, it's like you kind of hope for the best. So you're like, I'm going to stay in this house I've never been to. I'm going to hope that I don't wake up in a bath of ice cubes with my kidney missing. And you don't know what to expect. But I mean, by and large, it's just a community of good people run by good people trying to provide good services for other good people. It's like, well, all right, cool.
Yeah, and of course, I got the inevitable question of, oh, what kind of conference are you here for? She, to her credit, did not say, you don't believe in God? Her reaction was, oh, that's cool.
Right.
Difference between Christian, theist, and hippie.
Right, exactly.
Like, whatever is cool, man. I don't know if she smoked weed, though. I didn't smell any, but maybe that's why she kept the incense going all the time.
Right, exactly. Covering up. Yeah, you walk in, it's like, did you smudge the room, or is that just weed?
Yeah. Oh, but it was funny. There was a huge Gothic Catholic church across the street from the building that the bells went off every half hour.
Oh, fuck that.
Well, it stopped. I think it stopped at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And
still, that.
Interestingly, because checkout was at 11, so Sunday I was there for part of the morning until my friend came to pick me up, and they turned the bells off during church hours because it went off at 9, but it didn't go off at 10.
So you're going to bother everybody in the goddamn community with your bells, except for when you're in the fucking building?
That's
seriously.
Right. Yep.
That is such an asshole move. Are you serious?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I wonder why Christians are persecuted and burned at the stake.
I know, eh? Oh, Trippin said that I need to get a poster board with the usual questions already answered for theists when I go next to the convention.
Just walk around handing out cards. Are you about to ask me this question? What kind of conference? Fuck you. Here's a card. Read that, and then we'll talk.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Well, we should probably start wrapping things up. I know we got started a little bit late, but anything you want to add before we go, Bryce?
No, I guess just, I do 1.5 podcasts, Naked Mormonism and My Book of Mormon podcast. Have a lot of fun over there. So if anyone is interested in learning about Mormon history, just check me out over there and at Twitter and Facebook and all of the social media places. You can find that at Naked Mormonism. I am not the Naked Mormon, just the Naked Mormonism guy. So,
and he does it. Well, he might podcast naked, but we'll never know.
This camera has not dipped below the waist level the whole time for good reasons.
Dude, you know the rule. There are no pants in Hangouts. No pants allowed in Hangouts. That's just the rule. Always been that way.
Perfect.
And the website is nakedmormonismpodcast.com, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, because I know in the past I've looked for just nakedmormonism.com and not you. No, actually, there's nothing exciting. I think it's just this URLs for sale or something. But
no, bummer. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I was about to bookmark a new website. All right.
I know, eh? Well, thank you so much for joining us, especially on short notice.
No, thanks for inviting me. I always enjoy hanging out here on the trailer park. So, yeah, it's always good fun. Whether in person or, over virtual reality, I enjoy hanging out with you, Deb. And Tracy,
thank you.
It was good hanging out with you last time and this time as well.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Yes. I got an itch in my throat all of a sudden.
Deb's incapacitated.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, oh, that guy telling me that I'm not allowed to criticize Mormons because I'm an atheist. That's it.
Yeah, here's a hint. I'll criticize whoever the fuck I feel like.
Right.
I'm straight.
Yep.
Yeah, fuck you, Darth Darwin.
And I'll criticize Mormons when Mormons do a shitty thing, but I'll criticize Mormonism all day, every day.
Hell
fuck
yeah.
Mormonism. Yeah.
Fucking right. Bizarro cult. I think Scientology is a bit weirder. Not by much.
I mean, that's the thing. Mormonism and Scientology can trade blows all fucking day long and just end with a rocky knockout ending. So
yeah, I mean they both got the weird space shit and yeah. Although at least Mormons will let you take medication.
True. But Mormons don't pay their slave laborers, whereas Sea Org gets 60 cents an hour for their labor. So, like I said, we trade blows all day long. We'll never get to the bottom of it.
I really want to meet an ex-Falun Gong member because the two that I've come across that are practicing on Twitter, that might be weirder than both Mormonism and Scientology.
Gong?
Falun Gong. Or it also goes by Falun Dafa is the other term for it. That's the religion.
Are they the ones who gas the subway?
No, that's something or other. No, Falun Gong is out of China, and they're the ones that the Chinese government were persecuting, like rounding them up and throwing them into re-education camps and shit. So they have legitimately been persecuted, but they're fucking nuts.
God damn, like it's way too late into a show to bring up something like this.
Sorry.
Jesus Christ, we should have started with this.
I want to find somebody who left Falun Gong to talk to, but I have yet to come across one. So
somebody should create an epic rap battle between Mormons and Scientology, like L. Ron Hubbard and Joseph Smith.
Oh yes,
that would be pretty awesome.
Joseph Smith and L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, yes. Epic rap battle.
That is something we're missing in the world.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh well. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and sorry for springing the wackadoodles on you at the last minute. There's something for you to check out before you go to bed. There you go.
Yeah, and next time maybe we'll talk about the Raelian Mormons.
Hey, that's a good one too. Beth knows quite a bit about those guys.
I need to talk to her then. Cool.
Yes,
but as always, thank you for having me on. It's always
you're welcome. Absolutely. And Miss Tracy, where can we find you?
I am on Facebook as Godless Mama, and on Twitter at The Godless Mama, and my blog is godlessmama.com.
And you do a thing with Morgan.
Oh, yes, and Morgan and I are also on Facebook as The Political Feminist.
Yeah. And I will say, Beth, you can find most of her stuff if you follow her on Twitter at Dune998. She's under Beth A. Hambridge on Facebook, so you can find her on there as well. And Morgan is also on the Bi Skeptical podcast, and you can tweet her at MoString. That's M-O, because poor No String has gotten a few of her tweets now, and I kind of they probably wonder who all these weirdos are that keep tweeting them about religious crap. So sorry, No String, whoever you are. Yeah, and of course Morgan L. Stringer on Facebook, you can find her there as well. And you can find me on Holy Crap, the vlogcast, which airs Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. And that's hosted by the Shujin Tribble. The other night we had some new guests that we hadn't had before, and Maddie from Talk Atheists or Atheist Talk from Minnesota and the Trans Atheist podcast. She was supposed to join us last week and got called into work, so it was kind of cool. She was able to join us for Holy Crap, so that was fun. And yeah, we'll be here, of course, next week. Same time, same YouTube channel. And let me just pop up my calendar. And next week, we're going to be talking to children's author Courtney Lynn. And she's written some children's books that are skeptic-based to sort of help kids learn some critical thinking. So we're going to talk about the books and find out what that's all about. And just to prepare everybody, in 2 weeks' time, and this is going to be fun as well, Professor Stephen's coming back to join us, and we are going to review the movie Mazes and Monsters, which is a 1980s anti-Dungeons and Dragons flick. If you watched the last episode where we had Professor Stephen on, we talked about this. So we're going to go ahead and do it. He's going to come on and we're going to talk all about that movie. So
are we going to do the whole like Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing?
We should, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I'm thinking we did you want to join us, Bryce?
May have to. I'll check my calendar for that, but that just sounds like such a good party. Oh my god!
And I'm thinking maybe we can come up with a costume that doesn't have any pants to wear too.
Keeping it in the spirit of podcasting. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, no pants in a hangout. Just how it goes. It's the rules, people. So yeah, that's going to be in 2 weeks. We're looking forward to that as well. And of course, I do want to mention before we take off for the night, I find I have too many tabs open as usual. We still always like to mention the Whitefield's Educational Foundation and the Taylor Scholarship, because they provide counseling for people who are leaving or have left religion. And we think that's a really important thing. And the Taylor Scholarship provides funding for people who would like to speak to a counselor but can't afford to do it. And that was started by David Michael, who originated the My Book of Mormon podcast. And so the URL is whitefieldseducational.org/My Book of Mormon podcast. And if you're looking for a good charity to donate to, we definitely recommend those folks because they do a lot of good work. And of course, we do have our own little Patreon that we use to pay for our Spreaker hosting. So if you feel like throwing us $1 or $2 at any point, we would greatly appreciate that as well. Every little bit helps. So there's that. And I think that about covers everything. So until next week at the same bat station, we will be here. Thanks again, Bryce and everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things, I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.